And it really captures the idea, the theme of which I'd like to discuss, and then I'll get into it. So there's a famous jazz player named Winston Marsalis. I know it's maybe not familiar to all of us, but for the sake of that analogy, it's one of the top jazz players. Yes? You're familiar with it. He played the trumpet, thank you. So he was playing a sold-out performance one evening, and I'm sure all of us have been to some kind of concert or maybe in just the theaters, that you're asked to silence your cell phones. If you haven't yet, please do it. And he's playing his performance, and all of a sudden a cell phone ring goes off in a quiet place. And everybody looks at the person whose phone rang and is stunned, like how could you do such a thing? And it caused him to stop playing for a little bit, and everybody's like telling the person to leave. The person eventually leaves a little, comes back. But instead of making a scene out of it, this is like, he's a famous person treated so well, instead of like telling the person like get out, whatever, he stops, then like plays the person's ringtone on his trumpet back to back to where he left off in the song, and then continued. And people said afterwards that because of that, it actually turned out better than had it not happened in the first place. And this because he was able to be in that state of flow. He wasn't reacting to this sudden thing that, even though the person could have prepared and turned off their phone, he could not have expected that. And his response to it was priceless. So it's the state of flow, in sports, the athlete zone, that is really, how do we tap into that? And especially, in the world of Frumkeit and Chabad, Yiddishkeit, where we have a lot of demands, if you want to look at it one way, or things that we get to do, that we want to get into that frum flow. So please give me, by the way, a heads up on when it's getting like 2 minutes. But generally I enjoy preparing for speech so I can look up and share more with the audience. I heard once a nice story from the Rambam was writing to his brother, and he once wrote, I didn't have so much time to prepare, like I was in a rush, so you'll excuse the length of the writing. Meaning to say, when he had more time, he was able to be more direct with his words. So please ask for your forgiveness at a time if it's a little wordy, as I or my father can sometimes speak to it. So anyways, I want to talk about today something that's really resonated with me, that I personally have a little challenge with, is based on the Hayom Yom, which I think we're all familiar with, which is the Hasidic Yetzer Hara, and how the Yetzer Hara it's so clever, and it can dress up as a chassid with a kapata. And I think all of us now, especially a lot of us that have been learning in yeshiva for a decent amount of time, our Yetzer Hara isn't necessarily trying to get us out of learning. Sometimes it tries to get us ways in how we're learning, or the ways that we're learning things, or doing holy things, when actually we may have something also important to do. So a friend of mine once told me, when I was at a shul davening, and earlier on I love the experience of davening, but sometimes it was really difficult davening with a minyan. At least when you learn the tefillahs, you have to, at least how I was taught or how I received the learning, you have to answer this, or you have to be part of the minyan at this time, and this and that. And as far as you're connecting with the Eibishter and being present, because that's really what connecting with Hashem is, that can feel a lot of overwhelm. It can feel like a lot of pressure. But a friend of mine once told me, if you feel anxious about doing Jewish practices, you're doing it wrong. And that really resonated with me. And I think it's a very powerful lesson that we learned throughout these holidays, that Judaism and mitzvahs are meant to be done b'simcha. Every mitzvah connects us with Hashem Himself. And our avoda needs to reflect this divine flow. Just to capture one short story. I remember I came to davening on Shabbos, Chol Hamoed, Sukkot, and by the time, I'll admit, I woke up a little later, whatever, by the time I got to 770 where I felt inspired to pray, I missed Baruch Hu. And normally my intellectual mind yells at oh, you gotta go find another minyan, you're late, you're not gonna be part of this minyan anymore, you're not, you didn't do good. But it felt so present there, and I questioned that thought, maybe it's not, I don't have to answer that. Sure, it's good, but I'm there, I showed up when I showed up. And sure enough, when the Hallel started occurring, and I was just, holding by Sukkot de Zimra, I started crying, tears overwhelmed, because I didn't have to chase her anymore, try to be somewhere at a certain time. And I think this also is very well reflected in how towards the end of this whole holiday season by Hoshana Rabbah, we removed the top rings from the lulav. In a sense, spiritually what it represents is we loosen up. And then we were able to shake more lightly. And even by Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah, we're just dancing uncontrollably in a joyful way. And that's really what the thread of the holiday tries to get us to, is besimcha. And the first, we learned, when Moshe went up to receive the first tablets, he broke them because it was too much for the people. But Hashem gave him the second tablets in order that we should be able to receive them with simcha and with a full heart. And when we recognize, when it comes to even matters of holiness, that we're okay either way, whether you show up at this time or show up this time, all obviously with the intention to show up the full time, but sometimes a little bit less is actually going to take you more. And I heard just one final story. One of my favorite basketball players, Kobe Bryant, once shared his son, rest in peace, I think you say. He once shared a beautiful story about his growing up when he was a child. His father he was playing in a tournament and he scored 0 points, but his father came up to him and shared, whether you score 0 or you score 60, I'm going to love you no matter what. And I think that message is very powerful for all of us, especially when we're embracing a life of frumkeit, especially when we get into it, when we take on more, we want to do more, we want to learn this more and more and more. Hashem loves you no matter what, and actually from that place, we'll feel more empowered and inspired to take on more, but from a healthier place. So that's what Hashem is also whispering to us, and from that love, we serve Hashem not with anxiety, but with joy.